Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Martin Smith. I'm the head of marketing for Nearlane in the UK. This session is about loyalty. What I want to do first off, actually, is I want to try and wake you all up, actually, because you probably had something to eat already. Maybe you want to get some exercise and that kind of thing. So I'd like you all to stand up. It's a bit of a social experiment, if you will. And apologies anybody who came to my session this morning, because it's probably the same thing. So I don't know if everybody's seen the old movies of Japanese factory workers in the morning where they get up and they start doing star jumps and stuff like that. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm going to ask you, though, to shake your hands out like that by the sides. And when I say go, I want you to clap and hold your hands clasped together. Right? So shake it out and go. Right. Ladies, look at the gents next to you. Gents, look at the ladies. If their right thumb is over the left thumb, their thought processes are driven by logic. If it's the other way round, it's driven by sex. Thank you. You can sit down there. So, little thing you can try in the office, yeah? Just see what your colleagues are like. Bit of fun. Okay, so it's not a long presentation, but we're going to talk about loyalty today. And when I was putting the presentation together, I thought, well, I could go into all the sort of different issues of loyalty has today and what have you. But I thought, okay, what I'll do is I'll start by unloading my own wallet. And I'm sure everybody around here has the same issue. When you actually open your wallet to get some money out, the amount of cards that sit in your wallet there in terms of loyalty is just unbelievable. In fact, I would guarantee it takes up a good 60, 70, if not 80% of your cards and things in your wallet. So I did the same. So I started putting the presentation together. I thought, well, okay, what are my loyalty programs and what are the things I sort of engage with? So I thought I started off with the cards I've got in my pocket. Now, any Australians in the audience will recognise a couple of those, and especially Qantas and Westpac Bank. As you can probably gather from my accent, slight accent anyhow, I'm Australian. And I started looking through some of these, and I was looking then at what kind of communications I was actually getting from these organisations. So if I look at something like the good old Nectar card, which I pretty much use on a daily basis when I go to the likes of Sainsbury's and BP and people like that fill out my cards. And I thought, well, okay, let's look at what they do. So, yeah, I have a wonderful card and I collect all the points on it. I've downloaded an app. I have an app on my iPhone that tells me all the points I've collected and all the offers I'm getting. So I'm thinking, actually, this is not bad interaction as loyalty programs go. Then I started looking at some of the other ones. So I looked at the Qantas Frequent Flyer, and I looked at my Westpac Bank and these sort of things, and to try to understand the kind of communications I get from them. And what was quite interesting about it is that not one of these loyalty programs that I actually joined to on those cards there, were actually communicating to me in a way which was relevant. They were telling me a lot about what their wonderful loyalty programs and what the benefits are and what the greatest offers are and those kind of things. But not one of them really took into account the kind of activities I was doing generally and then communicating that effectively back to me and giving me offers and promotions which were relevant to me as an individual. And I noticed this is a challenge across a lot of the loyalty programs that I was on. So then I looked at the loyalty programs and said, well, okay, that's all the ones that are in my wallet. But then I have a number of loyalty programs that I do online as well. So I look at things like hotels.com. I don't know if many of you use that, but if you stay 10 nights, you get an extra night for free. I think they're doing a lot of TV advertising currently on that basis. And then look at eBay. We're doing various things where I can collect a number of points every time I purchase something and all those kind of things. And again, I started looking at the quality and the content of the communications that was being sent to me by these things. And I realized very quickly, again, they're not engaging with me as an individual per se. They're just sending out the same offers. And, one of the things I'm going to talk about through this is you've got all this wonderful information from your customer base. Why aren't you using it to make sure that any piece of communication that you do with the client is relevant to that individual, is engaging, is actually going to get that person to actually spend more money with you? And I think that's the challenge that a lot of these loyalty programs have. So then I looked at another area is this sort of brand loyalty versus loyalty programs. And what was quite interesting here was that, and we'll take the top one, which is banks. Now, obviously, banks have had a bit of a tough time over the past few years in terms of loyalty. And I sort of started looking at what's the difference between brand loyalty and the sort of loyalty programs they work. Now, if you look at the bank, a lot of it is to do, 66% of this particular survey was actually saying, well, actually, people are staying with the banks because of bank loyalty or brand loyalty as opposed to any loyalty programs that are actually running. And then when you dig down a bit deeper into the bank side of things, what it was in fact not about brand loyalty. The reality is everybody was saying, you know what, it's so damn hard and a pain in the arse to actually move my banking from one bank to another. I'm just going to stick with where I'm at. So it's a bit of a false negative, that one, in terms of brand loyalty versus loyalty programs. But I think we've all seen the ones in the retail side. We've seen in petrol stations, that kind of thing. And what's quite interesting, obviously, is that if you took at retail, there's a big push in terms of loyalty, and they're getting quite a good percentage of people actually saying, well, I go to a particular brand because of the loyalty programs themselves. So it's not all bad news, as I say, on the loyalty front. So then I thought, well, okay, let's, are these programs actually meeting the expectations of us, the individuals, the people using these programs? And again, I was able to put together some interesting stats from a variety of different sources. This one is from the North American Technographics on retail. And some of the challenges that they saw, first off was that, and bear in mind this is a US survey, I did look at some of the UK stats and it sort of tracked very similar to the US, was in fact that they're involved in more than 18 loyalty programs. 18. And you think about that, and if you look at your own wallets and your own stuff at home, you've probably got that kind of amount as well. Just think of all the sort of coffee cards that you've got and various cards that you were approached in a shop and asked to sign up for and what have you. So, it's quite interesting. They've got 18 programs, but less than half are they actively involved with them. So another one, this is quite an interesting one. It's of $48 billion worth of reward points effectively with these programs. At least 1/3 of it go unredeemed by consumers. So they've either forgotten with it, they're not engaging with it, or whatever, which could be quite a good statistic for people running the programs because they've effectively got another 16 billion in their pocket with that. But again, this sort of shows that they're not actually engaging with a lot of these programs themselves. We can then look at some interesting stats around that they haven't heard a single word from a loyalty program. This is all about the sort of communications aspect of it. And again, I go back to my own experiences when I've looked at the cards that I have in my pocket and what have you, and just see, have they communicated? How often do they communicate is another one. So if I take my Qantas frequent flyer, I went literally 4 years without hearing one thing, apart from the annual statement that I got from Qantas frequent flyer. And then all of a sudden, about 6 months ago, they went completely nuts and started sending me an email literally once a week for some reason. Now, it could have been off the back that I actually used a Qantas flight a few months back, and suddenly it's all, they all kicked off, and I get all this wonderful communication. I always say, is that what you really want to do in terms of the kind of image that you want to produce to give to the loyalty program members? So again, it's quite interesting to see that 85% actually haven't seen or heard any communications from these people. Another interesting stat that came up as well was the sort of the majority of consumers who enroll in these loyalty programs. And yet, as it says there, since 2008, the number of consumers who feel that loyalty programs don't offer any value have jumped by 50%. Again, I'll show you some statistics about that. And again, quite interesting is that, okay, so you join up to these programs, but people are saying, well, actually, am I really getting any value out of this? Am I really getting the offers that I want from them? Are they giving me the right kind of information? Again, are they personalizing any content to me? Are they making sure that I'm engaged with that particular program? And finally, again, another, I think, quite an interesting one, is that 36% of consumers received a reward or promotion that made them come back to the store. 36%. So you've got all of these people involved in these, enrolled in this loyalty program, but only 36% of them are actually coming back to your store. So again, it's about the engagement aspect of that. So again, there are interesting stats. It's worth mentioning here, we do actually have a white paper on our stand. Our stand's at the front of the exhibition hall at C5. Please come along, pick one up. It talks all about these stats. It's quite interesting reading. But pop along and grab one of the white papers. So let's drill down into some of these areas. So this is obviously looking at what happened in 2008 opposed to 2011 in this particular case, that we're actually seeing some interesting trends happening. So this one's the interesting one. We're actually seeing that the loyalty programs are no longer, or they're reducing the actual influence that they have upon people actually doing the purchases from that particular brand. Interesting enough, we've got the most loyal programs that don't offer real value. Again, dropping, because these sort of brands are not actually giving the kind of information and perhaps loyalty that the customers are actually expecting. So that's one set of stats, and I thought, well, let's have a look at it from the marketeer's perspective. So we've talked about, obviously, the consumer and what they expect out of it. What are the challenges that marketeers have around the loyalty aspect of that? So here's a few interesting things. So differentiating our program from similar efforts in the marketplace. Well, yeah, some of the programs are pretty much the same. They're earn and burn type programs that you get, whether it's a petrol card or whatever, and get your points and you can spend them on certain things. Interesting one is understanding customer interactions across all touch points. And I'll talk about this in a minute. But this is more about how do I ensure that any interaction I have with the loyalty member is actually then I'm using that information to ensure that I'm communicating the right way with the right content. So again, some interesting statistics. These came from a Forrester survey recently. And of course, what we also found with a few of the companies that we've engaged with as an organisation, and I could talk about a few of those later on, but we've actually found that a fair chunk are not satisfied with the way that their loyalty program is actually performing. Whether it generates sort of erratic returns to it, whether they underperform against the sort of expectations that they had with the actual program itself. And some of them, and a fair chunk said, well, we're pretty happy with it, sort of it's performing in line with the expectations that we had with it. So the question is that, is this the dead end for loyalty? Is loyalty dying to a certain degree? Wow, I've sort of talked about a lot of stats that say, well, basically loyalty is on the way out. Well, it's not. And I think the way it's going to go forward is interacting more and more and grabbing more and more information from clients, members and everything, and using that more effectively to engage with those individuals. Now, the other challenge that we found with a few of the organisations that we dealt with is that loyalty can actually be quite a long project, it's a long sort of feedback loop that it requires. Doing a lot, and we've sort of been engaged with a few companies who say, oh yeah, we want to do a loyalty program. We've thought of some great ideas. We've got some points happening. Let's get it going and what have you. And they don't really understand that some of the things is about how to engage with that customer effectively, how we can then interact with that data, how we can get really good insight into those members and use that to then drive more revenue through those particular members to then actually reduce the churn that's occurring on that. One thing to keep in mind that the whole project, when you look at a loyalty program, is very much the sort of the feedback loop and using that information. It is long term and it's a lot of investment that you have to make into that. So one of the challenges that we found is this issue of what we call cross-channel complexity. The reality is that as consumers, in a lot of respects, we don't care what channel we're receiving information from that particular brand. We want the same brand experience regardless of whether it's through DM, email, in the store, at the point of sale, whether it's on our mobile phone, wherever that might be, we want the same high-quality brand experience, and we want to get value out of it as individuals. And this is probably one of the areas that a lot of loyalty programs break down on, that they're actually perhaps using 2 or 3 particular channels to communicate with, but then neglecting the others, so that the consumer doesn't feel they've been engaged in that particular level. I think the other challenge when it comes to this here, this cross-channel complexity, is that not only have we seen in certain organizations that the loyalty program is almost in a silo to the rest of the marketing organization. And this is another challenge. So you could be, for example, doing a great loyalty program and running communications with those people, but then there might be other touch points that the customers have with the brand that you're not taking into account when you're running those particular programs. So again, I urge you to look at how a loyalty program will then fit into the rest of your marketing, and it should be an integral part of that program itself. So again, it's one of the challenges for a lot of organizations to get to the point where they can do this cross-channel marketing, but more importantly, to make sure that the loyalty program itself is incorporated in the way you communicate to customers through these particular channels, and make sure that you get a consistent message across all of those channels to the client. Another sort of challenge, of course, and I've been talking about it, I mentioned it a number of times, is this whole making sure that whatever communication that you're doing with a client is highly relevant. And what we've seen with our clients, for example, we've seen everybody go from, sort of doing some basic personalization of content, so that might be names. So an example of, I get a statement from Qantas, it has my name personalized at the top and my points added, and that's pretty much it. There is no real engagement in terms of, look, Mr. Smith, we've actually seen you travel from Brisbane to Melbourne, and by the way, here's a great hotel to stay in Melbourne next time you're down, and by the way, if you book 3 weeks in advance, we'll give you an extra discount on the flight or anything like that. None of that existed. So they were doing sort of fairly basic name relevancy in terms of the personalization. What we've seen is that as companies move up that curve in terms of creating better sort of customer experiences, what we've actually also seen is that they've actually got better conversion rates with the campaigns associated with their loyalty programs. To the point where if you're going to real-time one-to-one, and I'll talk about real-time in a second, but when you get to that sort of real-time one-to-one personalization, that you're taking information from that client on the fly and making sure that content is then displayed highly relevant to them, their conversion rates are up. But more importantly is this marketing fatigue. And I'm sure all of us have done this when we've got communications from a variety of different, loyalty points or whatever. You sort of go down your list of emails and you're literally going delete, 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 because basically they're not providing you with any value. And what we found is that with our clients, if they are engaging on this sort of real-time one-to-one approach in terms of content and making the content highly relevant with the communications, the marketing fatigue, or this sort of unsubscribe or this delete approach, is actually reducing because people are actually reading it. It's engaging. Makes sense. So, again, I urge you to think about how you can use the data that you've got about your clients in the program, how you can then personalize the experience, whether it be content or whatever, to that individual to ensure that they're engaging, have better engagement rates and less churn associated with that program itself. Now, I talked about real-time one-to-one, and this is an area I spoke about this morning, actually, if anybody was at the session, but it's what we call SOLOMO. Sorry, it's another acronym that you've got to add to your conversations at work, and basically you sound like you're talking gibberish half the time with all these acronyms that we've got around in our industry. But SOLOMO is this convergence of social, local, and mobile. And local is a very key part of this. It's being able to actually understand in real time where that individual is. Now, we all have smartphones, and I now see various people sort of taking pictures of my slides and those kind of things. I should have done it in augmented reality, actually. So, everybody's got their smartphones. And a recent study by Forrester actually indicated that of all the mobile phones in the UK market, over 60% now are of a smartphone nature. So they're either Android or they're iOS devices. And that's even borne out more by, for example, social, where it's over 1 billion users of Facebook around the world now, but over half of those are now actually accessing their Facebook via their mobile phone or via a tablet. So, being able to literally have that then in real time, because if you're using a mobile phone, and you're engaged with an app or something like that on the mobile phone, what you're actually sending back is things like the longitude and latitude coordinates, so where you are in real time. So this real time is all about being able to say, okay, we know that this individual is in a certain place. We know this individual is in our membership program. We know he's bought these many products from us in the past. So let's actually communicate with them relevant. So let's have a relevant conversation with those individuals and not just send them the same old bland stuff that we normally send them out on our membership program. So again, I urge you to think about how you can engage with those clients now on a real-time basis using devices like, smartphones and what have you. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this, with someone like Nectar, they've got an app. Now, the app is okay. It sort of offers good offers, and there's some offers on it, but does it really take into account where I am in real life? Does it say, by the way, we've noticed that you're actually only about 50 yards away from a home base? If you use your points in home base now, we'll give you an extra 5 points or something like that. So they're not doing that. They're those sort of things that you should be thinking about when you run that kind of program. So, little bit of a sales pitch, sorry. That is what it is. Just some of the some of the companies that we've been engaged with from a loyalty program perspective. Now, we don't do all the points and all that sort of thing. We do all the communications on their behalf. They use our tools to be able to engage with that. And there's some quite interesting ones. So let's pick one out here. Okay, Debenhams, actually, because this is quite relevant. So they're using our system to run their beauty club. So ladies, if you go into Debenhams, you can pick up their beauty club. There's a whole part of points that you score every time you purchase products on there. And they run a very interesting communication strategy. They're constantly communicating to their clients on a relevant basis, the kind of products that you've purchased through point of sale or that you've shown interest by clicking on the website, and they've tracked you around the website where you've gone. They're able to engage and provide you with interesting offers and promotions around products that you're going to be interested in. If I take a negative of that, and I don't know, anybody signed up with Groupon here? I was expecting quite a few hands to go up on that one. Yeah, okay, so Groupon. How many people get the beauty, men, how many people get the beauty therapy ones? Yeah, pretty much all the time. Again, not relevant, not engaging, delete. Am I right? So again, think about what you could do in terms of that. Make sure you're collecting information that a man probably wouldn't be interested in a spa treatment. Well, he might be, I don't know, but generally not. And again, making sure that whatever you're engaging in terms of the content is highly relevant to that individual. Some other interesting ones there that we do, Accor hotels. So Accor is about their Blue Card. I'm a member. Now, they're doing some interesting work at the moment with real-time personalization. So when you start going onto the website, they're starting to get some more personalized content coming up against you as an individual member. So again, they're taking this real-time one-to-one approach so that they can start offering it. And there's things like, there's one on there like Scandinavian Airline Services, where we've actually taken their standard template for their loyalty scheme, which is Euro Bonus scheme, I think it's called. And what we're able to do is actually take that and then add cross-sell and upsell messages to the bottom of that communication statement. Again, don't just think about this as being a marketing opportunity. It can also be used within transactional and operational messaging. So if you're sending out invoices or order confirmations and that kind of thing, think about how you can then insert those kind of messaging at the bottom of the actual invoice or order, and make sure that those messages are highly relevant. So try and grab as much information about the client. Try and make sure that when you're selecting that content, it makes sense against those things. So just a few, and if you come along to the stand, we've got some case studies, and there's a few of my team there that would be happy to talk through some of those customers that we've got there. So finally, I'm going to pick a few out of here because I think I'm sort of running near the end of my session. But there's some interesting ones in terms of what you should be doing. This one, collect customer data to increase relevancy. So I've been talking a lot about that. Now, when I do talk about this, admittedly, a lot of people come back to me afterwards and say, that's great. Yes, I've got Facebook, and yes, I've got Twitter, and yes, I've got all these wonderful channels now coming into it. But as a marketeer, I'm struggling to get to the real data that sits in there. And the problem is with a lot of clients, they have this huge amount of data about their customer, but how do I actually then get to that real part that I need? And again, that's where you need to start using tools to mine that data, to target, to segment, and all those kind of things. Again, look at your technology. Is it up to the job of actually getting to the point where you can actually dive in, so that you can actually get to the information that you need to create that relevancy in terms of the content. Create an experience around redemption and lift engagement. Well, again, what I was talking about, making it relevant, will obviously drive that engagement and that lift engagement, and in the same time it will reduce the churn. And again, we've got some case studies. If you want to come by the stand, give me a card or something like that, and I can put that in an email to you. And as we say, one of our sort of taglines is conversational marketing. We talk about engaging customers in this one-to-one dialogue and having a conversation with them. And loyalty programs are probably the number one for most companies in terms of the ability to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming for this session.